Welcome to the Midi Quest View Window tutorial. The View Window is found only in Midi Quest XL and is normally used only for development purposes. The View Window is laid out in three sections. The left column is simply an offset into the data itself, and it is displayed in hex. So this is offset 40 or decimal 64, the location decimal 65, and so on into the data. The central area is the actual data displayed again in hexadecimal format, and you can simply scroll through the file and you can view the contents exactly as it is dumped from the instrument. And on the right hand side is a text equivalent of the SysEx data. Now you'll notice many of the entries here just show as dots. We display dots in situations where there is no viable hex character to display. This area is not that useful except for finding the location where the patch name is stored within the data. Now we'll have a quick look through at the various features that in Midi Quest that relate to the SysEx View Window. Now for starters, most of the access is handled through the Studio window. If you would like to load data from an instrument into a SysEx View Window, you choose the type of data that you want. Say it's a DX7 voice bank. Right click on the Get button and choose SysEx Window, and Midi Quest will load the data in and display it. Or if you'd like, say, a motif ES voice, again, right click, choose SysEx Window, the data is loaded and displayed. Oops, we'll have to reload. There we go. And there is a full dump for the ES6 voice. Now, just like any other window, once you've loaded this data, you can save it or save it and give it a name, and it will be saved as using the same extension as if you'd loaded this data directly into an editor. And in fact, once you've saved it to disk and reload it, it can be reloaded into an editor just as easily as into a SysEx View. Now, if you've got a file on disk that you would like to view in SysEx, again, you can simply choose the type, right-click on the Open button, and you'll get a pop-up menu. And you'll see you have an Open to SysEx option here. Midi Quest will automatically jump to the correct directory for the DX7 and filter for voice data, and it's just a matter of selecting the voice you want, and there's the data. Close this up and we'll reload from the instrument. Now, just like all of the other windows in Midi Quest, when a SysEx View Window is active, it has its own menu, and you can choose the first option is Copy as Text, and this will copy the actual SysEx data here to the Windows clipboard as text, and from there you can paste it essentially wherever you want. Right now I've pasted it into a notepad, or you can paste it into a Sonar SysEx window if you'd like to be able to transmit this particular piece of SysEx from Sonar, or if you're working on the Mac, Performer again allows you to paste SysEx data displayed as ASCII into the sequencer. I'll just close that up. The next option is Restore Current Byte. It would be rare, but you can actually perform editing from this from the editor. If you want, you can click on any byte, hold the mouse down, and drag left and right, and you can change that value. Changed values, you'll see alter from black to white. Now, if you'd like to restore that value, you can choose Restore Current Byte, and it will be taken back to the current value. I'm sorry. White is not the edited value. White is the cursor position that shows you which character is currently selected for editing. And if you change the value, you'll see that it is now displayed in red. And you can go back to here, and if you want to restore the current byte, you can. There's also an option if you've made multiple changes and you'd like to return to the data as loaded. You can choose Restore All SysEx, and all of the bytes will be returned to their original value. There are two options here that are specifically bank related, so I will load in a voice bank. And the first option is Advanced Voice Size, and what this does is it actually steps the display of the editor window forward by the exact number of bytes as the voice size parameter as specified in the driver. So it allows you to quickly step through each of the patches, and you can look at each one if you want. You can see in each case here the text for the voice name, and you can do the reverse. You can back up by the voice size amount as well. Midi Parser is a interesting dialog that actually will parse the SysEx within the window into its constituent individual SysEx messages. Now, a Yamaha DX7 voice bank only has a single SysEx message, so it's not the best to use as an example. Let's jump down here to the Motif ES, and we'll load this in here. We've got a lot of different SysEx messages, so right-click at your pop-up menu, choose Midi Parser, and you can see that the dump actually contains 39 different SysEx messages, and if you want, you can click on a message and press transmit to transmit just that message to the instrument. Again, the tools that you're looking here are used almost exclusively for development and exploration of raw SysEx. If you aren't developing your own editors or your own drivers for Midi Quest, it's unlikely that you're going to find much use for this view window. Compare SysEx is a nice utility, and I'm going to jump back to the voice bank here for the DX7. What it does is it actually, when you choose it, allows you to compare to the current data that you have in the window against a file that has been already stored to disk as a MIDI Quest data file. So I choose that option. I'll get a file selector up. I'll go into my DX data collection, and I will simply choose Voice Bank. And what you get here is the Windows modified itself, and on the left-hand side you see the data that you loaded in, say from the instrument, or that you originally loaded in from disk, and on the right is the file that you just selected. And in both cases, each of the elements in the file that are different from each other are highlighted in red. Now here you'll see an awful lot of red, but where this can be very useful is if you have data from an instrument that, say, the documentation isn't complete on the contents of the instrument, or you know the documentation is wrong because the documented range doesn't match what shows in the instrument, and you need to find out where the changes are. What you can actually do is load a base voice and save it to disk. So that's always your starting point, and maybe make it an initialized voice, something that is as simple as possible. You can then go to the instrument, and on the instrument manually edit a single parameter. You can then load that modified voice in a SysEx View window. For comparison, load in the base sound that you've already loaded and saved to disk. And what you should see, what should show up in red, is probably 1 or 2 bytes, and that will show you where the parameter that you've edited is being stored, and from that you should be able to determine, say, what the correct offset is in order to edit that parameter, what the limits are. Maybe it's an unusual situation where the actual parameter is stored in a number of different bytes, and all of this will show up highlighted within the SysEx View window, making it very easy to find these unusual variations. And you'll notice when it's in this mode, the option here is checked. If you choose Compare Again, that additional data file that you've loaded is released and the display returns to normal. There are a couple of other things about the display that I haven't mentioned. Any byte that is a status byte in MIDI, so that is a byte that has the high bit set to 1, will display as yellow. So here your F0 shows as yellow. Your terminator, F7, shows as yellow. If for whatever reason there is any other MIDI data stored in here, like note on, note off, patch changes, something of that nature, you'll find that the first byte of that SysEx message will be highlighted in yellow or displayed in yellow. And you'll also notice that this first selection of bytes is displayed in blue. Now what Midi Quest does is it looks at if you've done any work with creating drivers. One of the available parameters is called header size, and it specifies the number of bytes from the start of the file to where the actual data or individual voices in the bank are stored. And so what we do is show the header bytes in blue, and so this byte, the 6th byte, is the first byte of actual data. This is header. It will be exactly the same for every bank that is sent down to the DX7. The final parameter is in the pop-up menu is Settings. Choose it, and you should at this point be very familiar with this dialog. It's exactly the same as in all the other windows. You can set up the port in, port out, COM channel, MIDI channel, and so on for this data. If you want more information, you can watch one of the other videos or get some online help by hitting the help button. Just a couple of other parameters covered here. This window does respond to the transmit to instrument command, so you can select this option and Midi Quest will send the contents of the SysEx View Window back down to the instrument. Thank you for viewing this tutorial.